The blizzard came without warning. At first, it was only static on the radar, a haze on the horizon that the sensors couldn't read. Then the temperature dropped 20 degrees in under an hour. The storm swallowed the sky. The world turned white. Pilot Officer Claire Monroe tightened her gloves around the control stick. The aircraft rattled under her. An old twin-engine recon transport refitted for Arctic operations. It wasn't built for this. The wind screamed against the fuselage like it wanted to tear the wings away. Behind her, in the narrow space where supplies were strapped down, her canine partner, Rice, shifted uneasily. The German Shepherd had served through 3 missions, trained to locate human life under any conditions. His instincts were sharper than any sensor. When he began to growl low in his throat, Claire knew something was wrong long before the warning lights started flashing. The right engine sputtered. Power loss. Ice buildup on the intake. She adjusted altitude, fighting the turbulence. Her voice was steady when she spoke into the radio. Base Command, this is Angel 7-2. I'm experiencing system failure on my starboard engine. Requesting Vector to alternate landing site. The response was static. Then nothing. Lightning cracked across the sky, bright enough to turn the cockpit glass white. The horizon was gone, replaced by endless motion. She tried again. Angel 7-2 to base. Do you copy? The only reply was wind. The altimeter spun. The aircraft began to drop. Rice barked once, sharp and urgent. She reached behind her with one hand and touched his head, calm, firm. Hold on, buddy. We're not done yet. She pulled back hard on the stick, but the storm had her now. Ice weight on the wings doubled, tripled. The airspeed collapsed. Gravity did the rest. Impact came not as an explosion, but as a silence so total that for a heartbeat she thought she'd gone deaf. The sound came back in pieces. The hiss of escaping steam, the groan of twisted metal, the low whine of the wind seeping through every crack. Her body was half-pinned in the seat. Every muscle burned. She forced her hands to move, to unbuckle the harness. The door had jammed, frozen shut. She kicked it open, and the storm burst in, a wall of white that stole her breath. Snow poured into the cockpit, covering the floor in seconds. She crawled out, dragging her pack, pulling Rice behind her. He yelped when his injured paw hit the ice. Blood stained the snow instantly. She tore off her scarf and wrapped it around his leg. You're okay. You're okay. The words were more for her than for him. The wreck was half buried already. The tail had snapped off somewhere down the slope. A field of broken parts glimmered in the white distance. She scanned the sky, searching for movement, but there was only the storm. She set up the emergency beacon and activated the signal. The light blinked weakly, red against the white. Its battery would last 12 hours if the cold didn't drain it sooner. Then came the waiting. She built a crude shelter against the wreck, layering insulation panels and snow, lighting a chemical warmer for heat. The temperature inside climbed just enough to keep her fingers moving. Rice lay beside her, shivering. She cleaned the wound, stitched it with trembling hands, and gave him water from her flask. Outside, the wind roared like an ocean. The blizzard didn't just blind, it erased sound, shape, and memory. It was easy to imagine she was the last person left on Earth. Then she heard it, a tone beneath the wind. Faint, metallic, rhythmic. It wasn't natural. It pulsed like a heartbeat, electronic, steady, deliberate. She crawled out of the shelter and lifted the scanner. The signal was weak, but real. Not her beacon. Something else. Could be another crash, she whispered. Or base relay. Rice stood, tail stiff, ears forward. He growled once, deep and uncertain. The scanner blipped again. Direction, north by northwest. Range, less than a mile. She packed what she could, strapped her pack tight, and began moving. Rice limped beside her, refusing to stay behind. The snow was waist deep, the wind strong enough to push her sideways. Each step felt like climbing through liquid. Half an hour later, she saw the shape. A vertical spike of metal jutting from the ice, topped with a rotating antenna. It was still running, faint red light pulsing through the frost. "Old relay tower," she said aloud. "Still active." She reached for the panel. It hummed faintly under her glove, warm despite the cold. The surface wasn't military issue. It was too smooth, too advanced. The label was barely legible under the frost. Northgate Biotech/Unit 4A. The name hit her memory like a jolt. Northgate had once been a defense contractor, a division shut down years ago after ethics hearings. Research into autonomous command systems, neural interfaces, biosynthetic adaptation. She had read about it in a classified debrief after her first tour. "What are you doing all the way out here?" she whispered. The ground beneath the tower vibrated faintly. Not wind. Machinery. Alive. Rice barked once, a short, sharp warning. She pulled back. Something was moving under the ice. Then the signal on her wrist transceiver blinked green. Someone was transmitting nearby. A voice crackled through the static. "Angel 7-2, this is Echo Team. Confirm your position." Her heart slammed once. "Echo Team, this is Angel 7-2. I copy. Requesting extraction." "Hold position," the voice said. "We're tracking your signal now." The transmission ended. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to exhale. Help was coming. But Rice didn't relax. He stared north, tail down, a low growl rumbling deep in his chest. Claire followed his gaze. Through the storm, something moved, a dark shape against the white, walking upright, steady, deliberate. Too steady for a man in this wind. The shape stopped, turned toward them. The transceiver flickered again, this time with interference, so sharp it pierced her ears. The light on the relay tower changed from red to blue. Rice barked and lunged forward, teeth bared. Claire froze. The shape began to move again, closer this time. She grabbed her rifle and backed toward the wreck. Whatever that was, it wasn't Echo Team. Far above, buried somewhere under the storm, a different receiver caught the same transmission. The man monitoring it adjusted his headset, his voice calm and clipped. "Signal confirmed. Pilot's alive. I'm going in." His name is Logan Pierce, Navy SEAL, and he was about to walk into a blizzard no one else would dare enter. Logan Pierce had known storms before. Not weather, but the kind of chaos that stripped the world to its bones. The desert heat that bent light. The jungle air so thick it had breath. The sea that could erase a man's trail in minutes. Cold was just another kind of enemy. Predictable, merciless, and honest in its intent to kill. He moved through the blizzard with the same precision he used on night raids. Each step calculated, each breath measured. His gear weighed nearly 80 pounds, but his body didn't slow. The storm howled in his ears, a white roar that swallowed everything beyond a few meters. Beside him, Ranger, his German shepherd, tracked the faintest traces of scent through the snow. His fur was laced with frost, eyes glowing amber against the gray. The dog didn't flinch when the wind hit, didn't falter when visibility dropped to nothing. He was built for endurance and loyalty, a creature that didn't know surrender. The transponder on Logan's wrist flashed every 30 seconds, the pilot's beacon. Weak, fading, but constant. He checked the coordinates again. The signal wasn't drifting. Whoever had sent it was alive and stationary. "Almost there," he said quietly. Ranger turned his head slightly, ears flicking back in acknowledgement. A shadow moved to the left, fast, low. Logan froze. His rifle came up, fingers steady on the trigger. Through the snow, the shape vanished, swallowed whole by the white. He waited. Nothing. "Keep moving," he murmured. When he reached the ridge, he saw the wreck. Half buried in snow, the fuselage bent at an impossible angle. The crash site looked like an open wound on the landscape, black metal, smoke still curling faintly, the smell of burned insulation. Ranger barked once and bounded forward. Logan followed, sliding down the slope. His boots sank deep into powder that had no bottom. At the base of the wreck, the snow was disturbed. Tracks. Not just human. dog prints beside them. Fresh. Good boy, Logan said under his breath. He found the emergency beacon still blinking red, half covered in ice. That meant the pilot had set it manually after the crash. Alive, at least for a while. Then he heard it, faint, muffled, a bark. He turned sharply, scanning the storm. Ranger stood rigid, head pointed toward the drift behind the cockpit. Logan climbed over the twisted metal and found the shelter wedged between the tail and an ice wall. The entrance was narrow, blocked with snow. He dropped his pack, cleared it by hand, and leaned inside. A flashlight beam flicked back at him. "Stay back," a woman's voice shouted. "Friendly," Logan answered, lowering his weapon. "Navy SEAL. Picked up your beacon." There was silence. Then movement. The light steadied. "You're not base command." "No," he said. "I don't wait for orders." She hesitated, then moved closer. Her face appeared in the beam, pale, sharp-featured, eyes rimmed red from cold and exhaustion. "Pilot Officer Claire Monroe. Angel 7-2. "Pierce," he said. "Logan, you hurt." "Nothing broken. My dog's injured." He crawled halfway in, scanning the space. The German shepherd inside lifted his head and growled softly, protective but weak. The blood on his leg had frozen black against the fur. Logan reached out slowly. "Easy, buddy. I got you." The dog allowed him close. That said everything about the trust between handler and animal. The kind of bond no training manual could describe. "I can stabilize him," Logan said. "Then we move. This weather's not letting up." She shook her head. "Visibility's 0. We'll get turned around." He met her eyes. Better lost moving than dead waiting. Minutes later, they were back in the storm. Rice was secured under Claire's jacket, his head resting against her shoulder. Ranger led the way, nose down, tail low. The wind tore at their faces, and the world shrank to the reach of Logan's flashlight. They made for higher ground, following the signal of his transponder. The satellite feed was unstable, but it gave direction north-northwest toward an old plateau. After an hour, they reached it. The wind eased just enough to reveal a metal structure embedded in the ice, the same relay tower Claire had seen before. "Northgate," she said through the scarf covering her face. Logan wiped snow off the surface. The lettering was still clear. "Northgate Biotech, Unit 4A. He frowned. "I thought they were shut down years ago." They were. At least officially. The ground beneath the tower vibrated faintly. Ranger began to growl, ears back. "Something's alive under there," Logan said. "Could be a generator, or something worse." The transponder on his wrist beeped once. Then again, louder. The signal wasn't coming from the tower anymore. It was moving, fast, circling them. "Contact," Logan said immediately. "Multiple." Claire lifted her weapon. "Human. Unknown." Ranger barked, a warning so sharp it cut through the storm. Rice struggled to his feet and joined him, teeth bared though he could barely stand. Through the snow, the first shadow appeared. Then another, and another. They moved wrong, too smoothly, like film playing at the wrong speed. "Get back to the wreck," Logan ordered. Claire didn't argue. They retreated toward the slope, firing short bursts into the white. The figures didn't drop. They scattered like smoke. When they reached the wreck again, Logan pulled a thermal charge from his pack, set it near the path they'd taken, and triggered it. The explosion tore a hole in the storm, light and sound shattering the white silence. For a moment, there was clarity, and what he saw froze him. The things weren't men. They wore the shape of men, but their faces were smooth and their skin too pale, almost translucent. Beneath the skin, blue light flickered like static trapped in veins. Then the light faded. The snow closed over them again. He turned to Claire. "You saw that?" She nodded once, her expression unreadable. "I saw it." They set up a new shelter behind the wreck, both dogs pressed between them for warmth. The wind screamed, but neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Claire said, "If Northgate's still running something here, it's off the books. Deep research. Biosynthetic neural control. I've seen references in classified debriefs. Logan looked at her, and they were using human subjects. Her silence was answer enough. When morning came, the storm thinned to a dull gray haze. The air was still, heavy with the kind of quiet that meant the land itself was listening. Logan stood outside, scanning the horizon through his scope. Nothing moved. Then, from the north, a faint orange flash lit the clouds. "Flare," he said. "Distress signal?" Claire asked. "Maybe," he said, already packing. "Or bait." Either way, they were going. And the dogs, Ranger strong, Rice limping but determined, led the way into the unknown. The flare's glow bled through the storm like a wound in the sky. It pulsed faintly, orange against the pale horizon, distorted by wind. Logan didn't trust it, but he couldn't ignore it either. Distress meant life, and life meant answers. They advanced slowly, cutting through knee-deep snow. The cold bit through every layer of gear, finding seams, biting skin through cloth and steel. Ranger took point, his movements steady, head low, tracking. Rice followed beside Claire, limping but alert, refusing to fall behind even as his breath steamed through the frost. The storm muffled sound, and that silence was dangerous. In the field, silence was rarely peace. It was distance between what you saw and what waited just beyond your sight. They reached a small valley framed by jagged rock. The wind funneled through it like a tunnel, carrying the hiss of moving snow. Logan stopped, raised a gloved hand, and scanned the terrain through his scope. There was movement, a faint shimmer near the ridge. Heat signature. Too small to be a vehicle, too warm to be ice. "Something's there," he said quietly. Claire's fingers brushed the trigger of her rifle. "Human, maybe." Ranger growled low, the sound deep and resonant, tail stiff. Logan trusted the dog's instincts more than any scope. He motioned to Claire to stay back and advanced alone, step by step. The flare was half buried in the snow, still burning weakly. Next to it was a collapsed tent, shredded by the wind. Inside, scattered papers, thermos frozen solid, and a portable generator, dead. Novodius. He turned over the nearest document. The paper was brittle with cold, but the words were legible. Northgate Biotech, Field Test Log 19B. He read the next line. Subject transport successful. Neural adaptation phase initiated. Behavioral sync at 72%. Claire joined him, eyes narrowing as she read. They were running field trials here. In a storm zone, Logan said, "That's suicide. Not if you wanted it hidden." Ranger began to bark again, sharp and urgent. Logan spun. On the far slope, something crawled from the snow. A man, or what had been one. His suit was torn, his skin gray, frostbitten, but his eyes glowed faint blue. "Hold!" Logan shouted. The figure didn't stop. It staggered forward, each step mechanical, as though something else was moving the body from inside. Claire lifted her weapon. "He's infected." Infected with what? Northgate Tech. They tested neural integration protocols on live subjects. I read about it in training briefings. They were trying to merge biological instinct with mechanical precision. Ranger barked louder. The sound snapped the figure's head toward them. It screamed, a sound like metal grinding against metal, and broke into a run. Logan fired once. The bullet hit center mass. The man dropped, then rose again. He fired again. This time the head snapped back. The body fell still, twitching once before it stopped moving entirely. Claire knelt beside it, scanning the exposed circuitry under the torn skin. "God," she whispered. They wired him. Neural conduit directly into the brain stem. Ranger sniffed the air and growled again, deeper. Logan looked up. More shapes were moving through the snow. At least 4, maybe 5. "Time to go," he said flatly. They ran, boots sinking deep, snow flying in blinding waves. Rice kept pace despite the pain in his leg, his breathing loud and ragged. Bullets wouldn't save them now, only distance. By the time they reached the next ridge, the storm thickened again, wrapping them in gray fog. The figures vanished behind it. They stopped inside a rocky hollow. Claire collapsed to her knees, pulling Rice close, checking his pulse. Logan crouched near the entrance, weapon raised. Ranger stood at his side, chest heaving, snow crusting his muzzle. Claire's voice trembled when she spoke. "Those weren't soldiers." "No," Logan said. "They were the experiment." "Then what's left in that mountain?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a small device from his pack, a transmitter, long-range military grade. He adjusted the dials until the static cleared. "This is Echo 1 to Command Relay," he said into the mic, priority black transmission. "Possible biosynthétique contamination. Request containment unit and evac. Coordinates attached." There was no reply. He tried again. "Command, do you read?" Nothing but wind. The silence was too perfect. Claire looked up. "They're blocking you." "Or they're gone," Logan said. The air changed again, a vibration deep in the ground, faint but steady, like the pulse of a living machine. Rice whimpered. Ranger growled. Claire turned toward the sound. "It's coming from under us." Logan stepped closer to the rock face. The snow around it had melted, exposing metal beneath, smooth, circular, fitted with a seal. A hatch. He brushed away the frost and found a keypad, faintly glowing. "Underground entry," he said, "probably connected to that relay tower." Claire knelt beside him, fingers hovering over the panel. "We shouldn't open it. We don't have a choice." He pressed his glove against the panel. The metal vibrated once and slid open with a hiss. Warm air spilled out, tinged with ozone and something acrid. The tunnel below glowed faint blue. Claire looked at him. "You first or me?" He smiled faintly. "Ladies after seals." They descended together, dogs following close. The tunnel walls were smooth, almost organic in shape. Lights pulsed overhead in steady rhythm, like the slow breathing of something asleep. At the base, the passage opened into a vast chamber, machinery humming, screens flickering with static. In the center stood a transparent cylinder filled with a pale fluid. Something floated inside. Claire stepped forward. Her hand trembled as she wiped frost from the glass. Inside was a human form, or what remained of one, suspended in wires and tubing. A nameplate was bolted to the base. Dr. Harlan Voss, project lead. Logan's jaw tightened. So that's where he went. He was supposed to have died in the last evacuation. Ranger barked suddenly, snapping their attention to the far corner. A console had flickered to life on its own, the screen showing scrolling text. System override detected. Neural command uplink active. Claire's voice was barely a whisper. "He's still connected." The cylinder began to hum louder. Bubbles rose through the fluid. The figure's hand twitched. Then the lights flickered and a distorted voice filled the chamber. "You shouldn't have come." Logan raised his weapon. "We're not here to join your experiment, Doctor." The voice cracked with interference. "It's not an experiment anymore." Rice and Ranger backed away, both dogs barking now, their instincts screaming before logic could catch up. The hum turned into a roar. The cylinder split down the middle. The fluid poured out, steam rising where it hit the floor. What stepped out of the glass wasn't alive, but it wasn't dead either. And it knew their names. The chamber's light pulsed in long, steady waves, reflecting off the wet floor like ripples under glass. The air tasted like metal, dry and electric, humming through the walls as if the mountain itself was alive. Logan took a step forward, his rifle raised, but he already knew bullets wouldn't solve this. The figure that had stepped out of the shattered cylinder wasn't human anymore. Its shape was roughly that of a man, but the skin was a pale, translucent film stretched over dark wiring and bone. Blue light flickered beneath its surface, running through veins like electricity, searching for purpose. The voice that came from its throat was warped, broken, threaded with mechanical echo. "You shouldn't have come," it said again, its tone shifting like a machine cycling through frequencies. Claire pressed her back against the console. Her voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of calm that only training could fake. Dr. Voss. The thing turned its head toward her, movement too smooth, too precise. That name belongs to something that failed. Ranger began to growl, low and constant. Rice mirrored him, a deep, throaty sound that came from somewhere beyond fear. Logan moved sideways, keeping his aim steady. You're supposed to be dead. The figure's mouth twitched, a flicker of what might have been a smile, if not for the distortion under its skin. Death was inefficient. The lights flared. For a moment, the entire room was a mirror of white-blue light, showing flashes of other forms, shapes suspended in adjacent tanks, some human, others animal. Their eyes glowed faintly. None of them breathed, but their muscles twitched like sleepers trapped in dreams. Claire's breath caught. Oh my God, they're still active. The creature moved faster than sight. Logan fired 3 times. Each round hit center mass. Each round tore through it, but there was no blood, only sparks. It staggered but did not fall. Run, he said. They moved as one. Claire grabbed the data drive, still lodged in the console. The creature screamed, a sound so high and raw it made her ears ring. Rice lunged at it, catching the thing's arm in his jaws. The shock threw him backward, his body convulsing from the energy discharge, but he didn't let go. Rice off, Claire shouted. The dog obeyed, retreating but still between her and the thing. Logan hit the console with the butt of his rifle, sparks raining down. The lights dimmed, the hum in the walls fading to a low pulse. That's enough. We're leaving. They ran for the tunnel. Behind them, metal groaned as the chamber came alive again, the hum turning into a chorus, machines waking like hives. The walls flickered with faint blue light, the same rhythm as the creature's pulse. When they reached the ladder, the first tremor hit. The mountain shuddered. Dust and frost fell like ash. Claire climbed first, Rice slung across her shoulders. Logan followed with Ranger at his side, both moving on instinct now. The hum chased them up the tunnel, louder and faster, as if the mountain itself were breathing. They burst through the hatch into the open snow. The storm had died, replaced by an eerie stillness. The air was too still, too clear. No wind, no movement, no sound. Logan looked back at the hatch. Seal it. Claire activated the emergency lock. The door hissed shut, the keypad flickering red. What the hell was that? She asked. Northgate's legacy, he said. A prototype that learned it didn't want to die. The snow around them cracked. Beneath their boots, the vibrations started again, faint at first, then rising. The mountain was not still. It was shifting. Move, Logan ordered. They ran down the slope as the ridge above them split open. Steam burst through the cracks. Something metallic glinted beneath the snow. Long black cables that stretched like veins, pulsing blue as they broke through the ice. Logan, Claire shouted. It's spreading. He turned and saw it. Light racing down the cables toward the valley, vanishing into the snow like a signal being transmitted. Whatever that thing was, he said, it's awake now. They reached a lower pass where the terrain leveled into a field of broken rock and thin ice. Logan paused, scanning the horizon. We need shelter, and we need to destroy that drive before anyone else finds it. Claire held it tight against her chest. This could prove what they did here. We can't just bury it. Ranger barked once, loud and sharp. Logan's instincts turned cold. They're here. Shapes moved through the fog. More of them, dozens this time. Figures with broken faces, glowing veins, and hands that moved in perfect synchronization. Claire raised her rifle. How do we fight that? Logan checked his last 2 mags. We don't. We make them chase us. They ran again, through ice and shadow, the dogs flanking them. The air filled with the sound of pursuit, the mechanical rhythm of footsteps, all striking the ground in the same cadence. Ranger darted to the side, intercepting one that came too close. His weight slammed into it, dragging it down, teeth sinking into synthetic flesh. The thing's arm snapped backward at an impossible angle, but it didn't scream. It simply grabbed him by the neck and tried to crush. Ranger! Logan fired, the shot tearing through both machine and air. The figure fell, twitching. Ranger staggered free, blood on his fur, but still standing. Rice barked beside him, limping but fierce. Two dogs, two soldiers, fighting something the world had never meant to create. When they reached the far ridge, Logan triggered the last thermal charge and threw it into the snow. The explosion lit the valley like sunrise. The shockwave knocked them flat, heat washing over their faces. When he lifted his head again, the valley was burning blue, the same light as the thing in the chamber. Claire stared, her breath fogging. "You didn't kill it. You fed it." Logan said nothing. His mind was already turning, calculating routes, exits, the distance to the old weather station on the next plateau. They could run, but the truth would follow. He looked down at the dogs, both panting, both alive. "We keep moving," he said quietly. "If we stop, it wins." They turned toward the horizon where the snow met the sky. Behind them, the mountain kept glowing, a heartbeat buried in ice. By dawn, the mountain was gone behind a curtain of fog. The glow had faded, swallowed by distance, but Logan could still feel it in his bones. A vibration just beneath perception, like a frequency meant for something that wasn't entirely human. The plateau stretched before them in a wide sweep of gray and white, featureless except for the faint shape of the old weather station in the distance. A skeleton of steel, forgotten by the world. Ranger trotted beside him, limping slightly now, but refusing to slow. Rice followed Claire, the smaller dog's gait uneven but steady. The two moved like shadows of each other, one scarred and powerful, one lean and light. Soldiers in their own right. They reached the structure just as the wind picked up again. The door was frozen half open. Logan forced it wider with his shoulder and swept the room with his rifle light. Empty. Dust, ice, old equipment, and a stale smell of oil. "Clear," he said. Claire stepped inside, lowering Rice gently onto a pile of blankets. The dog curled up instantly, his chest rising in slow rhythm. Ranger lay beside him without command, eyes still fixed on the entrance. Logan shut the door and checked the locks. He'd been in enough remote stations to know how fragile safety really was. Claire sat against the wall, pulling off her gloves. Her hands shook as she held the data drive. "It's encrypted. I can't access it without Northgate's main protocol." "That's good," Logan said. "If you can't open it, neither can anyone else." She looked up at him, her expression brittle. "You still think we should destroy it? I think whatever's on there killed a lot of people to stay hidden. That's reason enough." He moved to the window and scanned the white horizon. Nothing, but absence didn't mean peace. He'd learned that in every war, in every storm. Claire's voice broke the silence. "When I joined the Air Force, I wanted to fly. I didn't sign up for this." He didn't look at her. No one signs up for monsters. They just find you. The wind moaned through the cracks in the metal walls. Somewhere deep in the station, a door slammed, pressure from the storm, or something else. Ranger's ears twitched. Then came a sound. It was faint at first, a low oscillation like a hum under the floor. Claire froze. "Do you hear that?" Logan nodded. Same signal pattern from the mountain. He turned on the old station console, half expecting it to be dead. But the screen flickered to life, static crawling across it like snow on glass. A frequency readout appeared. The signal was strong, too strong for atmospheric noise. And embedded in it, faint, distorted, was a voice. "Evacuate, containment breach." Then static. Claire adjusted the tuner. The voice returned, sharper now. "If you're receiving this, Northgate compound compromised. Subjects have achieved full synchronization. They're transmitting through neural field." The rest dissolved into distortion. "Neural field," Claire repeated. "That's what we felt. They're not just alive, they're connected." Ranger growled softly. Rice whimpered in his sleep. Logan's jaw clenched. You said they tested integration on humans. What if they used animals too? Her silence was answer enough. The screen flared again, and the voice returned, this time clear and slow, each word deliberate. Logan Pierce. Unit designation, Echo 1. Claire's head snapped toward him. It's saying your name. He stared at the screen. How? You triggered the system when you opened the hatch. It recognized your ID. Northgate was using military biometric data to map neural links. You're part of its memory. The light in the room dimmed. The signal grew louder, resonating through the floor, through their bones. Then, from outside, came the sound of footsteps crunching snow. Logan turned off the console. The silence was instant, heavy. He motioned for Claire to stay quiet and moved to the door. Ranger was already there, teeth bared, a low growl building in his throat. The steps drew closer, slow, deliberate, not rushing, searching. He peered through a crack in the wall. At first, he saw only white. Then a figure appeared, a man in a heavy coat, moving with mechanical precision. No light in his eyes. Another shape followed, then another. They tracked the signal, Logan whispered. Claire gripped her rifle. How many? At least 6. She glanced at the dogs. If they find us, they won't. He moved silently to the generator room and began rigging the last charge to the fuel tank. If they come through the door, we light it. It'll take them all. Claire hesitated. And us. He looked at her, calm and unflinching. We make sure the world doesn't get this far again. The first blow hit the door, metal bending under impact. Then another. Ranger barked, loud and sharp. Rice pushed himself up, standing despite the pain, his growl rising to match. The third hit split the hinges. A cold blue light seeped through the cracks. Now! Logan shouted. Claire pulled the trigger. The room exploded in sound and fire. The blast threw them backward. The world turned white. When Logan opened his eyes, he was outside, half buried in snow. The station was gone, replaced by a crater and burning debris. The storm was returning, thick and fast. Claire, he shouted. No answer. Then, through the smoke, Ranger appeared, limping, covered in soot but alive. He barked once, then ran ahead, leading. Logan followed, coughing, vision swimming. They found her near the ridge, half conscious but breathing. Rice lay beside her, unmoving. Claire's eyes fluttered open. He saved me, she whispered. Logan knelt, hand on the dog's chest. No pulse. But his body was curled protectively over her, as if even in death he refused to let harm reach her. Ranger pressed his nose against Rice's fur, whining softly. Logan's throat tightened, but he said nothing. He just closed the smaller dog's eyes and stood. We're not done, he said quietly. He looked back toward the burning remains of the station. Amid the smoke, faint blue light flickered again, still alive, still transmitting. And deep inside the static, the voice returned. Pierce, you cannot stop what's already become you. He looked at Ranger. The dog stared back, eyes sharp and waiting for orders. Then we'll hunt it, Logan said. And together, man and dog vanished into the storm once more. The storm was thinning again, the snow falling in fine needles that drifted sideways through the ruined valley. The glow from the wrecked station flickered behind them like dying embers, each pulse dimmer than the last. Logan moved ahead, scanning the path, rifle raised. Ranger trotted beside him, every muscle alert. Claire followed in silence, her breath visible in quick bursts of white. They had been moving for hours. The terrain had changed. No longer pure snow, but streaked with veins of black rock, the mountain skeleton showing through. It felt wrong underfoot, as if the earth itself were hollow. Finally, they reached a narrow ridge overlooking a deep ravine. The wind roared through it, carrying with it a faint metallic scent, oil, ozone, and decay. Claire stopped, one hand on her knee. We can't keep running forever. Logan looked down into the ravine. We're not. We're going down. She frowned. There's nothing down there. There's always something under the surface. He began his descent, using his knife to carve holds into the ice. Ranger followed first, claws finding purchase, moving with perfect balance. Claire came last, gritting her teeth as the wind tried to tear her from the wall. Halfway down, they saw it light, a faint blue shimmer leaking from cracks in the rock. When they reached the bottom, Logan swept the area with his flashlight. What he saw didn't belong in any wilderness. A smooth steel arch protruded from the ground, half buried under centuries of ice. It wasn't natural. It was built. Claire's voice was barely audible over the wind. Another entrance? Older, Logan said, preceded the lab above. Maybe even the war. The arch was sealed by a round door with no visible lock. He ran his gloved fingers along its edge until he found a symbol etched into the surface, a triangle inside a circle, the mark of Northgate Biotech. Same people, Claire whispered. They built deeper than anyone knew. Ranger sniffed at the door, then barked twice and stepped back. A low vibration rolled through the ground. The door began to open. Warm air hit them again, carrying the sterile scent of electricity and dust. Beyond was a corridor lit by pale light. Logan raised his weapon. Stay close. They stepped inside. The corridor stretched endlessly, lined with walls of glass. Behind each pane were rooms filled with obsolete technology, cryotubes, surgical frames, racks of servers long dead. Dust hung like fog in the still air. But as they moved deeper, the lights began to react. One by one, they flickered on, following their steps like eyes. Claire's whisper trembled. It knows we're here. Logan didn't answer. He already knew she was right. At the end of the corridor stood a massive circular chamber, its walls covered in old monitors and data terminals. In the center was a machine unlike anything he'd seen, half organic, half synthetic, pulsing faintly like a living heart. Ranger growled. Claire's flashlight trembled as she moved closer. The machine's surface was smooth and dark, but under the light, it rippled as if reacting to their presence. Claire raised her tablet, scanning. It's alive. Logan's eyes stayed fixed on the machine. Alive how? Neural tissue interfaced with processor arrays. It's thinking. The lights dimmed, and a voice filled the chamber. You came back. It wasn't mechanical this time. It was human, male, calm, weary. Claire froze. That's Voss. The voice continued. When they ended the project, they buried the truth. But I couldn't let it die. We built something beyond war, beyond biology. Beyond sanity, Logan said. You misunderstand, the voice replied. You're standing inside a collective mind. The fusion of soldier instinct and artificial continuity. The perfect protector. The thing we killed in the lab? Claire asked. Not killed, the voice corrected. Released. Ranger barked once, sharp and warning. Logan raised his weapon, scanning. From the shadows, movement. Figures emerged. Human shapes, uniformed, eyes glowing faint blue. Old soldiers, or what remained of them. Welcome back, Commander Pierce, the voice said. You were one of the first prototypes. Your neural map seeded the link. Claire turned to him, disbelief in her eyes. What does he mean? Logan's grip tightened on his rifle. Northgate used combat data from our missions to train their systems. I didn't know they used live brain mapping. You're part of it, the voice said. You always were. The figures advanced. Ranger stepped forward, teeth bared. Claire aimed at the nearest one. Stop, the voice commanded. The air pulsed. For a moment, Logan's vision blurred. His thoughts flickered. Logan, Claire said, panicked. What's happening? He staggered. A sound filled his head, a low hum, rhythmic, familiar. The neural field. It was trying to sync. Ranger barked again, snapping him back. The sound cut off like a switch. Logan exhaled sharply, sweat freezing on his forehead. He fired. The shot tore through one of the figures, which collapsed instantly. The rest paused, reacting not with fear but calculation. You can't destroy what you are, the voice said. Watch me. He fired again. Claire joined him, her rifle spitting fire in the cold. Ranger charged the nearest soldier, slamming into it with brutal force. The machine pulsed faster, its glow spreading through the walls. Cables slithered out from the floor like veins reaching toward them. Logan grabbed Claire's arm. Grenade! She tossed it. The explosion shattered the glass walls. Sparks rained down. Alarms screamed through the corridor. When the smoke cleared, the machine was ruptured but still alive. The voice, distorted now, whispered through the static. You can kill bodies, but not memory. Then we bury it, Logan said. He planted the last charge at the base of the machine, setting the timer for 3 minutes. We run. They turned for the exit. Ranger barked once, short, sharp, and darted ahead, leading them through the collapsing corridor. Behind them, light burst through the cracks as the machine began to implode. The hum rose into a shriek. They reached the outer door just as the blast went off. The shock wave threw them into the snow. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, slowly, Logan pushed himself upright. The arch behind him had collapsed. The mountain was still again. Claire coughed, wiping blood from her lip. Is it over? Logan looked toward the horizon. The storm had stopped. For the first time, sunlight cut through the clouds, painting the snow in gold. Maybe, he said, but something tells me this isn't the end. Ranger pressed his head against Logan's arm, eyes steady, breath visible in the cold air. Logan rested a hand on the dog's neck. Let's go home. They began walking. The wind carried no sound now, only the distant echo of something that once thought it could control life and death. The mountain kept its silence. The sun bled low across the horizon, an amber wound opening over a landscape of white silence. For the first time in days, the storm had lifted. The world looked peaceful again, but peace after horror always felt like deceit. The snow had covered every trace of what had happened. The crater, the flames, the buried steel bones of Northgate's experiment. It was as if the mountain itself wanted to forget. Logan walked at the front, his movements measured, steady, but inside him there was that same low hum, faint but still there. He didn't speak of it. He couldn't. Claire followed behind, silent, her face drawn and pale, one arm pressed against her ribs where shrapnel had caught her. Ranger trotted close to Logan's side, limping slightly, his fur streaked with dried blood. The sun caught in his amber eyes, turning them almost human. They were moving toward an extraction point that no longer existed. The command frequency was dead. Every relay tower across the region had gone dark after the detonation. There were ghosts walking through a place that no one would ever believe existed. By the 3rd hour, they reached the wreck of an old communications vehicle buried under half a meter of snow. Logan pried open the hatch and looked inside. The equipment was ancient but intact. He climbed in, brushed the frost from the console, and began working. Claire stood at the doorway. Even if you fix it, who's left to answer? Someone will hear, he said, and if not, at least the signal will carry. She looked past him toward the distant peaks. That sound we heard in the station, the frequency, it's still in my head. He nodded without looking up. It won't leave. It's built to stay. Built into what? He paused, his fingers resting on the frozen dials. Us. The words hung between them, heavy as the silence outside. Ranger whined softly, pressing his head against Logan's leg. The gesture grounded him. The one steady, living thing in a world filled with dead circuits and echoes. He switched on the transmitter. Static filled the room, sharp and endless. Echo 1 to any active channel, he said. Priority Alpha distress. Containment breach neutralized. Survivors, 2 human, 1 canine. Coordinates attached. He waited. Nothing. Then, faint, almost too faint to notice, a voice crackled through. Echo 1, this is relay command. Your signal's weak. Confirm containment. Logan stared at the console. The voice was hollow, processed like an automated archive more than a man. Containment achieved, he said. Facility destroyed. No further threat. A pause. Then acknowledged. Terminate frequency. Proceed to recovery point. The line went dead. Claire's eyes narrowed. That wasn't real. I know, he said. Outside, the sky had shifted from gold to gray, the light thinning. He turned the transmitter off, unplugged the power cell, and pocketed it. We moved before dark. They followed the frozen river south, moving in silence. The world around them felt emptied. No birds, no sound of wind, only the crunch of snow and their own breathing. The silence wasn't peace anymore. It was aftermath. By dusk, they reached the lower ridge, where the ice thinned into scattered rock. Ranger stopped suddenly, head raised, ears forward. Logan followed his gaze. Far off, barely visible through the dusk, a faint blue flicker pulsed in the snow. Claire's breath caught. No, he felt it too. The same low vibration, a hum beneath the air, faint but alive. It spread, he said. Ow! Signal wasn't local. It was global. Neural frequency. Once the machine reached full sync, every transmission tower, every sat feed, it all carried the code. She stared at him. You mean it's out there? He nodded slowly. Everywhere. The flicker pulsed again, then vanished beneath a wave of snow. Ranger growled low. Claire whispered, What do we do now? He looked at her, then at the horizon. We do what soldiers always do. We adapt. They set up camp near the rocks, where the wind couldn't reach. Claire treated her wound in silence while Logan built a small fire. Ranger curled up between them, his breath steady, his eyes always on the darkness beyond. After a long time, Claire spoke. When you saw that thing in the chamber, when it called you by name, did it feel like you? He didn't answer at first. The firelight flickered across his scarred face, reflecting in his eyes. It felt like a memory that wasn't mine, like someone rewrote the part of me that knew what fear was. She nodded slowly. Maybe that's what they wanted, to build something fearless. Fearless things don't know mercy, he said quietly. The fire hissed, eating through the last of the wood. Outside, the sky darkened into black, and the cold began to creep back into the world. When he finally lay down, Ranger rested his head on his chest, the steady heartbeat of the animal echoing his own. In the dark, the hum returned, faint like a pulse in the earth. He didn't sleep. Soldiers rarely did. He just watched the stars appear above the snow, one by one, like faint lights in the ruins of heaven. By dawn, they were already walking again. The sky was a cold, clear blue. Somewhere far behind them, the mountain stood silent, smoke curling from its slopes. Whatever lay beneath, it was buried for now, maybe forever. But the hum had changed. It was quieter, fainter, almost at peace. They reached the southern ridge just before noon. From there, they could see the distant forest, green against the white, a promise of warmth. Claire turned to him. What will you tell them if we make it back? The truth, he said. And if they don't believe it, it won't matter. The truth doesn't need belief. It just waits. Ranger barked once, the sound echoing through the open air. Logan smiled faintly. Let's go home, partner. They walked down the slope together, 3 survivors crossing a dead world, carrying the silence of everything they'd seen. Behind them, the last light of the sun hit the snow one final time, glowing gold before fading. And far below, under the mountain's frozen heart, something stirred once more, slow, patient, listening. It had learned silence too. Months later, the official report classified the event as an environmental collapse. Northgate Biotech was dissolved under a dozen shell companies, its assets absorbed, its history erased. The mountain was sealed under federal jurisdiction, labeled unsafe. No one went back. Logan and Claire never returned to active duty. She transferred to civilian medical research. He retired quietly to a small ranch in Montana, far from comms, far from the hum. Ranger aged beside him, gray creeping into his fur, still watchful, still alert to every sound. Some nights, when the wind was low and the power flickered, the frequency returned, soft, rhythmic like a heartbeat under static. Logan would sit with Ranger by the fire, staring into the dark, and say only one thing. We did what we had to, because war never really ends. It only changes its name. And the line between protector and weapon, between man and machine, was crossed long ago in a blizzard where no one was meant to survive. He would close his eyes, and the hum would fade, replaced by Ranger's breathing. That was enough. The world slept for now, and under the snow, the silence waited.